In the wild, a bear's life is meant to begin in silence. Hidden deep in nature, under the shelter of trees and the protection of its mother, a cub should spend its earliest days in warmth, safety, and instinctive care. The forest should be its first home. The sounds of wind, birds, and rustling leaves should be its first lullaby. The scent of earth and woodlands should be the first world it comes to know. But for one tiny bear cub, life did not begin that way. His story began not in freedom, but in danger. This is the story of Nuri, a young bear whose life was interrupted before it had truly begun. A cub who should have belonged to the wild, but instead became a victim of human greed. A cub whose future was nearly stolen before compassion, courage, and rescue gave him a second chance. Nuri was only a few weeks old when his life took a tragic turn. At an age when he should still have been close to his mother, completely dependent on her for warmth, food, and survival, he was found in a place no wild animal should ever be found, in an online advertisement. He was being offered for sale. His price, 5,000 euros. A living, breathing bear cub, reduced to a number, reduced to a transaction, reduced to something that could be bought and owned. Somewhere behind that advertisement was a painful truth. This tiny bear cub had already been taken from the life nature had intended for him. He had been removed from the wild, cut off from the protection of his mother, and pulled into the cruel reality of the illegal wildlife trade. A world where animals are treated not as living beings, but as products. But then, something changed. An animal activist in Albania saw the advert. And unlike so many people who might have scrolled past it, shocked for a moment and then moved on, this person understood exactly what it meant. This was not just a disturbing image on a screen. This was an emergency, a crime, a life in danger. Action had to be taken. What followed was urgent. Every hour mattered. A cub this young is fragile. Without proper nutrition, warmth, and constant care, survival becomes uncertain very quickly. And in cases like this, the longer an animal remains in illegal hands, the greater the risk, not only to its health, but to its entire future. On March 21st, 2025, the bear cub was confiscated in Albania. That moment marked a new chapter. For the first time since being pulled away from where he belonged, this tiny cub was no longer in the hands of people who saw him as property. He was now in the hands of people who wanted to save him. Soon after, the young bear was brought to BEAR Sanctuary Prishtina in Kosovo, a place already known for giving rescued bears a safe home after lives marked by exploitation, neglect, and suffering. Over the years, the sanctuary had welcomed many bears with painful histories. Bears rescued from small cages, bears kept in cruel conditions, bears denied the freedom and dignity every wild animal deserves. But this rescue was different. This time, the arrival was not an adult bear carrying years of trauma. It was a baby, a cub so young that he still needed the kind of care only an experienced and deeply committed team could provide. From the moment he arrived, Nuri became the center of round-the-clock attention. Because of his young age, he had to be fed every 3 hours with a special formula milk. Day and night, without pause, the sanctuary team stepped in to give him what he needed to survive. He was surrogated, monitored, and carefully nurtured by the experienced caregivers on site. These were not easy days. There were no shortcuts. Caring for such a young wild animal requires patience, discipline, and constant vigilance. Every feeding mattered. Every small sign of progress mattered. His weight, his energy, his digestion, his sleep, his behavior,
all of it had to be watched closely. The team adjusted their lives around him. While the rest of the world slept, they continued caring for a cub whose life depended on human support. And that is one of the saddest truths at the heart of Nuri's story. He needed humans because humans had already failed him. In a perfect world, Nuri would never have needed a sanctuary. He would never have needed formula milk from a bottle. He would never have needed constant human intervention just to stay alive. He would have had his mother. He would have had the forest. He would have had the wild beginning every bear deserves. But that beginning had already been stolen. So the sanctuary staff did what they could do. They gave him safety. They gave him consistency. They gave him care. And slowly, day by day, they helped him grow stronger. As the weeks passed, the fragile little cub who had arrived in crisis began to change. He gained strength. He became steadier. He grew more curious. Little by little, his personality started to emerge. And like many young bears, Nuri was full of wonder. He explored his surroundings with growing confidence. He reacted to new objects, sounds, and smells with the innocent curiosity of an animal beginning to discover the world around him. His steps became stronger.
Easy now, little
his
one.
energy
You're
became
safe here.
brighter.
He's exhausted
The
but
fear
stable.
and
Let's get him warm.
vulnerability of his rescue story did not disappear,
Rest now.
but alongside it, something else began to appear. Life. Real, playful, growing life. As he developed, there was one difficult question that had to be considered. Could Nuri ever return to the wild? Whenever a rescued animal is made, that possibility must be taken seriously. The best outcome, whenever possible, is always safe rehabilitation and release. A wild animal belongs in nature, not in human care. But rescue is not only about hope, it is also about honesty. And in Nuri's case, that honesty was painful. Because of his prolonged contact with humans at such an early stage of life, rehabilitation for release was no longer possible. He had already become too dependent on human care. For a bear, that creates serious long-term risks. A cub raised too closely around humans may lose the natural distance and caution that wild animals need to survive safely. Such an animal may later approach people, homes, or roads, putting both the animal and humans in danger. So, after careful consideration, the conclusion became clear. Nuri could not go back to the wild. It was not the ending anyone would have wished for him, but it was the reality that had to be faced. And from that reality came an important promise. Paws offered to permanently house Nuri at BEAR Sanctuary Prishtina, where he could receive lifelong, species-appropriate care. Not temporary help, not short-term shelter, a home for life. With Nuri's arrival, the sanctuary became home to 18 rescued bears, and among them, Nuri became something very special, not just because he was the youngest, but because his story revealed how early human interference can change the entire course of a wild life. As time passed, Nuri's world began to expand. Once he had moved beyond his most fragile stage, he was gradually introduced to a life with more space, more stimulation, and more opportunities to express his natural behaviors. The sanctuary team built enrichments for him, objects and activities designed to keep him active, engaged, and mentally stimulated. And Nuri loved them. He played, he climbed, he investigated everything. He turned simple enrichments into adventures. A branch became something to wrestle with. A scent became something to follow.
Rescued from hardship, this young bear cub now thrives in a safe haven. Playful and full of wonder, he climbs and wrestles with joy.
By
His
November
lively curiosity shines as he
2025,
discovers
Nuri
hidden
had
treasures.
grown into a playful young bear with a lively spirit and a clear love for exploration. He especially enjoyed climbing trees, testing his strength, balancing on branches, and exploring his environment from above. He also had favorite foods. Carrots and apples quickly became top choices. And when autumn arrived, Nuri discovered a new favorite, chestnuts. These details may sound small, but they mean something important. For a rescued animal, moments like these are signs of healing. They show comfort, they show development, they show personality, they show that beyond the trauma of rescue, a young bear is still finding joy in the world around him. Recently, Nuri was moved to a bigger outdoor enclosure. This new space gave him more room to roam, climb, play, and grow. It also allowed his caretakers to continue creating new enrichments to keep him active and engaged. Because true sanctuary care is not only about keeping an animal alive, it's about giving that animal the fullest and dignified life possible, even when the wild can no longer be returned.
As Nuri approached his first winter, there was excitement at the sanctuary. How would he change in the colder season? What new behaviors would emerge? How would this once fragile cub continue growing into himself? The team watched with hope. Because every new milestone in Nuri's life meant something profound. He was still here, still growing, still discovering, still becoming the bear he was meant to be, even in a different life than the one nature originally planned. But Nuri's story is not only a story of rescue, it is also a warning. His case highlights the devastating consequences of the wildlife trade. Too often, wild animals are taken from their natural world and forced into situations of fear, suffering, and dependency. They are sold, displayed, hidden, transported, and exploited for money, status, or human fascination. And when that happens, it is not just freedom that is stolen. It is identity. It is instinct. It is the right to live as a wild animal should. A bear cub belongs with its mother in the wild, not in an online listing, not in captivity, and certainly not in human hands as an object to be bought and sold. Nuri's story also carries another important message. When people encounter bear cubs or other wild baby animals that appear abandoned, they should never take matters into their own hands. What seems like help can actually make the situation worse. The mother may be nearby, the animal may not be abandoned at all, and human interference can cause long-term harm that can never be fully undone. That is why wildlife experts and local authorities must always be alerted. Proper rescue requires knowledge, legal action, and species-appropriate care. Compassion is important, but compassion without expertise can still cause damage. In Nuri's case, the right people stepped in at the right time. An activist noticed, authorities acted, the sanctuary opened its doors. Caretakers gave him everything they could, and because of that, the cub who was once advertised for sale is today living a very different life, a safer life, a cared-for life, a life with room to grow. He may never know how close he came to disappearing into a system built on cruelty. He may never know how many people became part of his survival story. He may never know that his life now stands as a symbol of both the harm humans can cause and the healing humans can also choose to provide. But maybe he does not need to know. Maybe it is enough that he can feel the ground beneath his paws, that he can climb, that he can play, that he can crunch chestnuts in autumn and explore a larger enclosure with growing confidence. Maybe it is enough that he is no longer alone in danger. Maybe it is enough that he is home, not the home he should have had in the wild, but a home where he is safe, a home where he is protected, a home where he is treated not as property, but a living being with needs, instincts, and worth. Nuri's journey reminds us that rescue does not erase what was lost. It does not restore the wild childhood that was taken from him, but it does something deeply important. It interrupts cruelty. It replaces neglect with care. It replaces fear with safety, and it gives a vulnerable life the chance to move forward. Today, Nuri is more than a rescued cub. He is a survivor of the illegal wildlife trade. He is a symbol of why sanctuaries matter. He is proof that early intervention can save a life. And he is a reminder that every wild animal deserves dignity, not ownership, not exploitation, not captivity for profit, just dignity, just protection, just the chance to live. This is the story of rescue bear Nuri, a story of a life nearly stolen, a story of urgent compassion, a story of healing, growth, and second chances, and above all, a story that reminds us what becomes possible when people choose to protect instead of possess. Because every rescued life matters, and every wild animal deserves a future free from human greed.